Hello and welcome to Herbalist and Herbs. My name is Harry Chrissakis. Today's video is short: Cancer, the Wound It Won't Heal, Botanical Medicine and Angiogenesis. So the first thing I'm going to do is describe the title, and that'll open it up to the understanding of where I'm trying to go. Now, that cancer has been referred to as a wound that won't heal is an old expression in oncology itself. And the reason for that is that cancer captures the wound healing process and manipulates it to its advantage. And I'll go into the reasons why it does that. Under a normal physiology, when we have a wound, a number of things are suspended that are generally tightly regulated. One of them is cell proliferation. Cells have to exaggerate their proliferative capacity in order to fill the needs of developing new cells. Also, the built-in cell suicide, which is known as apoptosis, is also suspended because you can't have more cells dying if you're trying to build tissue up, so you suspend that process as well. Along with that is the process of going collateral venous structures. That's angiogenesis. And along with that is the creation of hypoxic conditions, blood conditions around the cancer, and that is a lower oxygen environment, which cancer likes to function in. It likes a lower oxygen, higher acid environment in order to proliferate it. Now, as I mentioned before, normally under the process of wound healing, all those things that I just spoke about, those processes are tightly regulated. When cancer gets a hold of things, all the rules change. And you can see why. Because if you can suspend cell death, if you can cause cell multiplication, if you can grow extra veins, and if you can create thickened and hypoxic blood, you've created four major things that support your growth and proliferation. And that's how cancer works in relationship to this area. It will use the wound healing process for its own ends. Now, the wound healing process under normal conditions comes to a conclusion where these kinds of things that are suspended or added onto get changed, stopped, or slowed down. Under the influence of cancer, that does not happen. Cancer keeps it suspended in that process, in that intermediate step. Now, the other thing about the fact that when cancer captures this wound healing process is that the cancer itself, the immune system thinks it is a wound. It's captured this process and manipulated the environment so that the immune system cannot recognize it, because the immune system will, of course, not attack a wound. What sense would that make, right? You'd just be attacking something that needs to heal, which is what many of those other processes are going in to try to do as well. And the cancer knows that and applies its intelligence to capture that process and cause further problems with its proliferation. Now, not only does that process do the things that I said, when cancer grows excess veins and blood systems to bring oxygen and food in, it brings a huge food supply in that it needs because it has a very sloppy energy process. Now, cancer also does a bunch of other things in relationship to the heal wounding process that I mentioned, like suspending cell suicide, which is called apoptosis, growing these collateral venous structures, which is called angiogenesis, which is part of our title, and disguising itself and thickening blood and lowering oxygen rates within the blood. Now, these things, all these things, and the things that the cancer is manipulating through this process, because it's also initiating growth factors for itself, all play into the cancer's ability to develop multi-drug resistance as well. So when you're working on angiogenesis, and that is a target, a common target for modern oncology, they do have drugs. When you're working on angiogenesis, you're also working on multi-drug resistance, which is a huge problem with chemotherapy. Now, I mentioned that standard practice oncology has a number of agents that do things that we're talking about, that they have an effect. They're very targeted drugs. The fact is, they are not broad enough in their effect. They're very specific about what they do, but they don't get anything upstream or downstream from the target. And cancer has the ability that when you take one leg away, it moves to another. Now, when working in a holistic fashion with a process within cancer means you work both upstream of the target and downstream so that you remove a great deal of cancer's infrastructure in that particular area so it cannot do that thing. Now, retarding angiogenesis in relationship to cancer is a major idea. And also bringing down multi-drug resistance before you even do anything is a major idea. Now, in order to be able to do these kinds of things, you also have to test to see what's going on in the bloodstream. Once you've established those markers, and those markers I have written down in the article that's on my website that goes with this, as a companion article that goes with this video. Once you've identified those markers, then you can use botanicals, supplements, diet, and a variety of other non-invasive measures to bring them down to normal, because you also need those particular things that those markers are showing, but you don't need them skewed the way the cancer is abusing it, right? So one of the things that you work on is copper, removing the amounts of copper that are in the bloodstream, because in order to grow these venous structures, the cancer needs a reasonable amount of copper that it can sequester out of the bloodstream. And it will do that. The copper acts as a switch in a number of angiogenic processes. So one of the ways you're working with angiogenesis is to reduce both serum copper and something called ceruloplasmin, which is a copper transport agent. That's just one dimension, so you get an idea of how to approach it. There are multiple other things that we do that bring down growth factors, that bring down hypoxia, that retard angiogenesis, that reintroduce apoptosis. So they're very important things, and they're quite broad in their effect as well. And once again, we don't just work on the target, we work up and downstream from that target in order to remove any of the other options that the cancer is going to manipulate if you give it that door to do so. So there are a number of things that can be done through natural medicine, and it has a beauty to it in that if it is executed properly, you can reduce the need for the types of drugs and the amounts of drugs that are given and the frequency of drugs, meaning that much of the resistance to the drug by the cancer is built upon these kind of foundations. Now, there are other things you do as well to reduce multi-drug resistance, but this is one of the main guys that you can do that will help you tremendously to do that. There are a number of other things that go into this process in the terms of the use of natural medicine, but I wanted you to get the general idea of how cancer thinks and works, and how someone who has an understanding of that, its physiology, normal physiology of the body, and the pathophysiology of cancer, can take natural medicine and dovetail it into that information and reduce the capacity of the cancer to do its thing. This is not about killing cancer. This is about subduing it, slowing it down, making it stupider and slower. This is a major aim that works well in the long term. There's very little sacrifice of healthy tissue. As a matter of fact, you're strengthening everything else. An axiom of natural medicine is to strengthen the core of the body and weaken the cancer. And this approach is part of that idea. If you want to know more about cancer and a variety of other disorders that are worked with natural medicine, please go to my website, Herbalist and Herbs. Thanks for taking the time.